Hey everybody, Tyree here with Before I Forget, along with Kevin. Say hey, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
And today we're going to continue with the
Part
part
three.
three of our, 12 part, or was it? I guess technically kind of 13 part.
I don't know,
Uh,
man, but you are definitely butchering this. The third part of our 12 series. 12, man, I'm butchering it too. 12, a third part of our 12-part series covering the deployment to Iraq in 2004.
we
Good
should
Lord, we should write that down.
do that all over again, so it's better, so it sounds better. Does that sound
No,
like
this is it. This is perfect. Let's just roll.
all right? Fuck it. Okay. So we're going to cover the month of April. Um, Many things happened in April, I'm sure, but it was pretty much dominated by the Battle of Easter that we had. And we're going to go ahead and hit that today and explain the whys and whats of what happened and how things went. And we have some very cool people here to assist us with that. Kevin, introduce our guests, please.
They can introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Right. Say hi, Griff.
Hey, I'm Griff, Michael Griffing, formerly, well, I guess in that April I was specialist type, Bradley gunner on the platoon sergeant's track. That's kind of where I was.
George.
All right. Now I'm George Rodriguez. I was the company commander for Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion, 108th Infantry, to attached to the 126.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And before we get into it, I kind of want to just a slight recap of March. So our March's episode, we talked about, first getting into Iraq and the reality setting in that we were there. We covered the death of Dustin Kreider, and how that kind of how that really kind of set the tone for what was to happen moving forward on that deployment. And I think it's important to note that, you know, that that specific event as it leads up to the Easter Sunday battle, and how that unfolded, for all of us. So yeah, Easter Sunday 2004. Like Tyree said, like there wasn't a lot going on. I'm sure there was things going on, but like everything is overshadowed by the battle on Easter Sunday in 2004, which occurred April 11th to April 12th, overnight. If I'm not mistaken, it's recorded as like a 16 or 18-hour battle. Which, I guess when you look at like the global war on terror and the types of battles that we typically encounter, like that's a pretty long one, I guess. Especially compared to the ones that we had throughout the year. I think the Baton Rouge may have been, a little bit longer, a couple days. But the rest of our little battles were like skirmishes, 30 minutes, a couple of hours, whatever. So this one was substantial in that it was our first real test, so to speak, and our first real like large scale battle with various types of assets from Abrams tanks to uh, Little Birds, the Kiowas. I think we have Blackhawks, right? Do we have those or Apaches?
Apaches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at one point I think we had access to F-16s, but from what I was reading, I wasn't aware of this, but that was actually waived off. So yeah, George, as the company commander, I feel like it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. I feel like you might have a little bit more understanding of the events that unfolded that day that kind of led into the battle. Is there any? I mean, at least from your guys' perspective.
Yeah. So it started out. We pretty much had the month of March to do patrols. I think we got 2 rotations of patrols in the city, so we didn't have that very much experience in the city. But there was a major holiday that was it was a big Shia holiday that happens at the Golden Mosque that was going on, and from elements way higher than all of us at Brasfield Mora, the decision was made to pull U.S. forces out of the city and let the Iraqi National Guard and the Iraqi police force handle everything that was going in the city. and base, where we were at, we were on one side of the bridge. We had to cross the dam to get into the city from our fob. The decision was made to send us across the city onto the south, I think it was southwest corner of the city in the desert, and set up a tactical assembly area there. We were there for about 6 days. So we had gone, dark 30, I think it was on the 5th. I'm not sure the exact date. We drove through the city that night, set up a tactical assembly area, and then had a vehicle checkpoint going into the city on the main route going into that southeast corner of the city. The couple of things is, one is we had shown up a little bit later than you guys, and our graphics had been loaded for our Blue Force trackers, had been loaded in Kuwait, which was based off of the last the unit that was there. I think it was the 4th ID, off of their graphics. And when we arrived at Brassfield Mora, we got the update, but it was for the city. It wasn't for any of the routes coming into the city. So there was a big issue when we got into contact where we had it was an MSR. I think they called it Latoya, which is what we were seeing, and you guys had it as Dover on yours, or the other way around. But that was a big issue. One of the big clusters that happened during that is just that computer era of, we had one graphic that was just outdated, and never knew it until something happened.
Kind of a shitty time to find that out too.
Yeah.
We barely knew anything about a lot of the Blue Force stuff. Like while all this stuff was going on, I was just a squad team member. I think I was a saw gunner at that point, may have been a grenadier, but I didn't really know what was going on with anything. We were basically just sitting in the back of the track listening to everything in the dark.
Yeah. Well, I had a Blue Force tracker in mind, and one of the big issues that we had was we'd only had 2 rotations. We were on that like 3-week rotation, and I want to say we had a week of moving through the city. And the way I was doing my rotations, I would take a platoon and a half each day. So I went out every single day. So I had a pretty comfortable understanding of how the city was, and but all my squad leaders, and they were still going off of maps, and they didn't have the Blue Force tracker in them. So it was a lot more difficult for them to navigate the city than it was for me, because I did have that extra navigational aid for me, which in the Blue Force tracker was like a big GPS.
Yeah, I think we had them. I know we had them in Kosovo, and I know they were slow to update. That's how we ended up accidentally patrolling into Serbia for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, Griff, you had them in the Bradleys, right?
I don't think we did, dude. I mean, I remember maps with overlays. Like that's how we got around, and like after a very short while, I didn't even use the map anymore. I just memorized all the streets, you know.
Yeah. Right.
That's a trip, man. I can't, besides the streets that we've had gunfights on, I can't remember them. You can say that was route whatever, but I can't remember where it is on the map. I don't even remember what it looked like.
I still remember like where fucking 40th Street is, where 50th Street is, you know.
Yeah.
Fucking Lakers, Celtics, Heat, Jazz. Like I remember all of those streets.
And we walked it. Like we were there because we had, I had a light infantry company, and I didn't have that many vehicles because they wanted boots on the ground, and we walked all those streets. So I think you learn those streets, you remember those names when you walk it a lot more than when you're driving through at 20, 30 miles an hour moving to your objective. So
yeah, that's true.
I remember almost all the street names, and the north southward numbers, and then I remember all that stuff.
I think as a dismount in the back of the Bradley, I mean, we have obviously a very limited view of the city until we're dismounted, and then from there, it's usually if we're being dismounted, it's either to go provide overwatch on top of a building, or just to do presence patrols, or we're in a fight and they need dismounts to do dismount things. So I mean, at least for like Tyree and I, because I mean, I was a specialist at the time. I was well, no, I guess we got promotable in
After.
May. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a corporal later. So Tyree and I being specialists in the squad, I mean, like I was a RTO, so I was attached to the lieutenant when he dismounted, but during this particular battle, like it was in his track. So I did get to hear a little bit of like what was going on during the battle through the radio, but it was all very chaotic, and it's hard for me to like stay on top of it or have an understanding of where things were going down, because again, like my view of the city was the back of a Bradley for the most part.
Yeah.
But
Hey, before we let's just get right into it, man. Start from the start all the way through to the end. What do you remember about the start of that day?
You want me to go first? And
Yeah, go for it.
all right. So, like I said, we were southwest of the city in the tactical assembly area. Like 2 days before, we found this massive cache of rockets and all these rounds and everything. EOD had come out the day before, and they only had enough C4 in the truck to blow up half of the cache. So when the order came on for us to set up a blocking position for Bravo Company, I had to split my company in half and leave half with the cache for EOD to come blow up on the 11th, and for the other half for the other half first and second platoon to move into the city and set up a blocking position. So our mission was to move in from the southeast corner, move into the city and set up a blocking position. It was around Jazz somewhere. I think that's the name of the street, but somewhere in there. And then once we established a blocking position, Bravo Company was going to move in and set up a cordon search. And they were going to clear their area. We were going to clear our area. And it was a textbook cordon search the way we were doing things back then. So we got the order. I split my company in half. I took first and second platoon because those were the most heavily armored vehicles I had. I had 5 tons with some add-on armor that we had built. I had my Humvee was an up armored Humvee, and I had a couple of Humvees with add-on armor. So that was the easiest way that we can move with the most protection into the city. We didn't have any armor or anything like that. So, and that was about 4 o'clock. We started moving into the city. We started moving from the south. And I know, I believe when we started moving in, Bravo Company was already in position and they were starting to clear their area. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think you guys were already clearing before we got into contact. So I don't know if Griff remembers that or not, or
I was when we got the call, I know we were rolling through town, like we hadn't dismounted anybody yet or anything. We got the call and like it seemed like it went from like a lazy ass Sunday to all hell broke loose like that. Like
yeah.
and so we started rolling out to I think like 50th and Jazz or it was like the southeast sector of the city.
Yeah.
And like it just like all hell broke loose, man. We had to like knock traffic out of our way to get to where you guys were. And now you got to realize, like, I'm seeing everything through a scope like the size of a $50, like this, and like that's everything I see is like what I can scan, and like occasionally I'll look out of my periscopes. But we got to some point and we stopped, and like immediately we started getting shot at, and my platoon sergeant starts yelling at me. He's like, Griff over there. And so like I swing and I see, like it still stands out like to me, like in my mind to this day, this asshole carrying an RPG by the sling. And like what got me was like he was like he didn't look like a dirty farmer, dirt merchant, whatever. Like this dude was wearing like his Sunday best. He had like a green sash on with like gold Arabic writing on it, and so so I smoked him with a 25. Like he was trying to hide behind a wall, and I shot him through there. And then at that point, our headquarters platoon got, I guess they got they got flanked, and they were in an intersection. I think that's where I remember 50th and Heat, because that's where we had to go.
Yeah.
We get there, and like my buddy Nate Love is on top of a 5-ton with a 50 cal, and like, you know, they're like rockets are coming from like 2-3 different directions. Like one washed out my integrated sight unit. It was so close, like it like right over our front deck. And dude, it's just that part's kind of hazy because like I was just all over the place with that gun.
So it seemed from the
Yeah.
start, it seemed like a pretty well coordinated attack.
It was.
It was.
I think the whole city exploded at one time. It was
Yeah.
so I think it was like 405, 410. We were rolling to the city, and I was the lead vehicle because I had the Blue Force tracker, and where we were moving to, it just would have been too difficult to have the guys try to maneuver, you know, with maps and the vehicles to get to that spot. So it was easier for me to lead it with the Blue Force tracker. So I was in the front, and I remember I was right by the mosque. We ended up calling the Holy Mosque afterwards because one of Bravo Company's tanks blew it up pretty much. Where we were taking fire from. But I remember when I hit that point, and when I hit that point, the IED went off, and then that's when the call came out that we had our KIA. And I remember I got out of my vehicle and we started engaging on the street right away. And I think the thing that took them by surprise was that when we made contact, like we all got out of our vehicle and started fighting. And I think with the 4th ID before us, they would just travel through the city and they would make contact, and they were mostly armor, and they would just keep rolling through and they wouldn't stop and fight. So we had an ambush position on the south. So if you look at the city on the southeast corner, there was a big berm, and I don't know why, but there was a fuel truck there, like a tanker truck right there. And just behind or just in front of the tanker truck, they had dug like a trench, and they had machine gun positions in that place. So they were firing north into the city along that Route Heat. And then they had people on the rooftops along Route Heat with RPGs that were engaging us. And then in the southwest corner of the city, way off by where the industrial area was, they had mortars set up. And the mortars were coming and they were hitting the big field in that corner. And I know I got the call that we had the KIA and wounded, and I believe, boy, I'm not sure who my squad leader was at the time, but came up and I asked him if he could find the ODA house from where we were at, which was our Kazabak point, and he wasn't 100% sure. So I was like, if I bring you to the traffic circle, can you make it there? And he's like, yeah, I know where it's at from the traffic circle. I can make it I can get the guys to there. So I grabbed 2 Humvees and a 5-ton, and 2nd platoon, I told them to remain in position and start clearing that area. And I drove with the Kazavac group up to the traffic circle, and it's a traffic circle near the ODA house. Mm-hmm. And when we got there, I jumped out of my vehicle, and we were taking fire, you know, in there, but I mean, we were moving so fast, it was quick. And the 5-ton, I mean, I think it lost a road wheel. It may have got hit by another IED. But they got hit by an IED, and they had fired a RPG round into the top from one of the rooftops, which is what killed Nate Brown. So, you know, that happens. We moved to the traffic circle. I remember getting out of there and saying, all right, do you got this? And he's like, yep, I can make it back. And I got back in my vehicle. I looked at my driver and I said, all right, turn around, we're going back. And he's like, well, we don't have any more vehicles. And we were telling him, well, you better drive fast because we need to get back over there. So we went from the traffic circle, and I remember we just threw down the windows and we're just shooting out the windows as we were going, and drove right back into the ambush site. So when we got back to the ambush site, where I stopped pretty much in the same place, but it was a little bit farther west, and I could actually see perpendicular into the ambush site, and I could see them lined up in the gas truck. And on my vehicle, we had a Mark 19. So I directed the Mark 19 gunner to engage the fuel truck, and he blew up the fuel truck which then started when the fuel truck went up. Then they really started dropping mortar rounds. And at that point, we were trying to get Bravo Company to us. That's where the mix-up on the route. We had a big mix-up on the route, and I remember the tanks arrived first. So when the tank got there, I'd been taking fire from the mosque, and I told the I think it was the platoon sergeant, that's where we're taking fire from, and I think they fired like 4 rounds into that mosque, and there was no more fire coming from that mosque at that point. And then at that point we broke contact, so we started. We were dismounted, and basically we were clearing alleyways and roads, and just traveling up until we got to an area where we weren't taking fire anymore. And then we loaded up and moved to the ODA house.
And for clarification on that mosque, so it was, while we were there, it was definitely part of our rules of engagement to not engage anything holy. So mosques, the minarets, all of that stuff, that was we were not allowed to engage those things at all. However, during this battle, there was a high concentration of fire coming from there, and it was approved at the brigade level. If I'm not mistaken, it was Colonel Dragon, who had approved an F-16 with a 500-pound bomb to just take it out, because that's where a lot of the fighting was coming from, and likely because they knew that we weren't going to engage those. We weren't going to engage these holy sites. So, but approval came from the brigade commander that we could send some F-16s in and just level it and just neutralize that threat altogether. And who was it? Was it Captain Rockefeller that said no? We'll just go ahead, or maybe it might have been battalion level. And they went ahead and hit it with the Abrams.
Yeah, I think the that was the Green Mosque, which is farther in the city where they're taking fire from. So we were allowed to shoot that one because so it lost its protected status once they used it as a they were as a base of fire. So when they rolled up and I said that we were taking fire from them, we were because I remember they came back afterwards. They wanted us to pay for it, and Colonel Allen said to pound sand, and they never fixed that mosque up because he's like, it lost its historical status once they started fighting from it.
Right.
And we took multiple rounds from that one mosque. And it was a small mosque. It wasn't a big mosque. The mosque you're talking about, I think it was the Green Mosque, and it was a really large mosque with a big, tall spirit. This didn't have any minarets or anything like that. So it was it had a big. We always used to joke by because we'd see it and be like, oh, it's got a drive through and a sunroof now, because there were some holes all over it. Yeah,
and that is one thing I think that they weren't probably anticipating. They were probably anticipating that we're not going to engage these sites, probably based off of what the guys before us, how they responded to fights, just rolling through, and this might have been like their biggest test to see what we would do in certain scenarios. And I would like to think that they were unpleasantly surprised that we decided to not only fight back but also engage in some of these areas that they considered to be protected sites that we wouldn't normally engage. I would like to think that probably deterred a lot of things that might have happened had we not done the things that we did that day. But yeah, so you guys engaged, or that mosque gets engaged, that gets cleared out.
Yeah, and we had cleared maybe a block north into the city from the ambush point. And I know a lot of the guys from second platoons, they took a lot of the RPG teams were coming off the roofs and totally did not expect to see these dismounts in these alleyways. And they were clearing through and they were engaging dismounts left and right, trying to get off the rooftops at that point, because we hadn't received any air at that point. And I know when they finally got birds in the area and everything, they said there were at least 40 bodies laying in the alleyways and the streets in that area where we had first made contact. So it was a pretty long fight. I think I went through, in the first minute and a half, I think I went through 90 rounds. I had to get some ammo from my RTO, and it was quick and fast. It was, I mean, hindsight being 2020, when we rolled into that area, there was no one on the street. And, looking back, that should have been the first clue that we saw no one on the street. We should have been like, oh, something's going to happen. But nothing like that had happened before.
Right.
It was we've been, when we drove to the tactical assembly area, there was no one on the street. So it wasn't something, but looking back, you see all these things, you're like, oh, we should have known. But it was just one of those things that it was the first time. I think if this would have been later on in the tour, we would have never driven in there. It would have been completely different because it completely changed our mindset and the way we operated.
Yeah.
But no, it was it wasn't anything that I expected. Especially with the train ups and everything that we had before. We had the first episode we talked about JRTC. This reminded me of like a JRTC thing where they're throwing everything at you. I mean, we were having machine guns, IEDs going off, RPGs skipping across and then mortars coming in, and it was like everything was happening at once. Like this is something that they don't talk about happening here. It was like a combined effort. We were definitely taken by surprise by the way in the amount of fire that we took that
in. In retrospect, I'm wondering. So it sounds like the kickoff, right? You guys took the brunt of it, and I'm wondering, because it really does seem like a very coordinated attack on their part, and we're just responding to the ambush, and I can't help but wonder, because of your vehicle situation and the fact that you inevitably had to dismount when you were engaged, I can't help but wonder if you guys were intentionally targeted for this attack and not us.
I believe
I
that.
think they thought we were a supply convoy.
Yeah.
Just like a supply unit moving through, because they would always get hit. If you had 5 tons with supplies and everything coming through, those guys were getting hit either on the MSR or they were getting hit all the time. So I don't know. I think they may have saw that. No, nice fat juicy target. We're going to shoot up a couple vehicles and then, and that's it, and walk away. But it was they had no follow-up plan. They had a plan to engage us, and then they had no plan after that. And I think that was us staying and fighting really changed the way what was going on. But,
so you think
for us,
you think you were identified as a soft target for them?
Yeah,
and
I think
then yeah.
I mean, you guys were rolling on tanks and Bradleys with a couple. I mean, you had some serious armor going around there, and so I think they knew that. But and I wanted to say that as soon as we took contact, Bravo Company started taking contact right away, and they were in contact really, really quickly. And I think maybe one of your Bradleys got disabled or got damaged or something like that. And it was all right around that time. It was I just remember the radio was just going crazy with contact.
I know what you're talking about, and what happened was my track broke off from the rest of my platoon to go to that intersection where the headquarters platoon was, like I was talking about. And I engaged a guy who was hiding behind a car. And like, I didn't just waste him, I wasted the car too. And like, it caught on fire real quick and it sent a column of black smoke up, like pretty much from our position. My lieutenant thought we got hit. And so he was talking about that on the radio. And then my platoon sergeant got on the radio and starts yelling at him like negative, negative, negative. We just set a lot of shit on fire at this intersection. And yeah, it was crazy.
Well, there was a track that went down. And from what I'm reading, it looks like Lieutenant Gunther's track had turret problems. His ISU stopped functioning. So he had to control.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He had to control the Bradley from outside, from being out of the BC hatch, which is wild considering the volume of fire and the amount of contact that they were likely taking. But
and all this is going on, and we're just sitting in the back of the Bradley hearing it. Like I didn't see an enemy combatant the entire day nearly, which says a lot because there was enemy combatants fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
And I still had a platoon and a half outside the city, which were even their vehicles weren't armored half as much as the ones that we had from second and first that were in there. And they were trying to come in, and I told them, I was like, "There's no way you can come into the city right now." And so they were maintaining a position south of the city. When we had started moving, EOD had finally blown up the cache. So the original plan was we were going to get in position. They were going to roll in after us, and we're going to link up there. They're trying to link up with two elements moving. And yeah, I had a hard time trying to keep the other platoon and a half. My first sergeant wanted to get into it with the Kazovac going on and everything, but I mean, it was just it was a little chaotic at first, especially trying to keep them out of the city.
So our company headquarters platoon, led by First Sergeant Salinas, you know, they had got engaged around 50th with RPG fire, small arms fire, and including enemy on top of the mosque that you had previously fired on, and so that's when Griff, that's when your track, you and Sergeant Baggett broke off and headed over to assist headquarters platoon with regrouping. Yeah. So that's when you guys got over there. They were heavily pinned down, and then y'all lit up that intersection over on 40th and allowed them to regroup while the rest of the company continued down Heat and north of 50th Street. And the thing you're talking about, where the billow of black smoke, and they were calling out that your track was hit. If I remember correctly, I was listening to this on the net, and it was the BC of 2-5 that was saying that you guys were hit and that y'all were down.
Oh, Ferris, yeah.
And it was several minutes, I think, before you guys came over the net and said you're good to go, and then you were able to clarify what had happened. But yeah, that was at the very beginning of the fight, and I do very distinctly remember that, because like I was pissed off that like he was just like blatantly calling that over the net, being like, "Hey, they're dead, you know, whatever." And I'm like,
yeah.
I feel like there's protocol, there's SOPs for this, but so third platoon.
I guess I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey,
we were really trying to get into the fight, but they would not let us out, man. Refused.
No, fuck no, dude. I mean, dude, I was getting shot at from three sides, and like my dismounts were banging on the turret shield door, like let us out, and like we couldn't.
It was the crazy.
I can't drop the ramp if there's like RPGs flying by, you know.
Yeah, no, I get that, but it was like the craziest thing. And like, drop us off somewhere in the corner somewhere. We'll meet up, or we'll fucking pull some security somewhere and do something. We just wanted to have some part of anything. So I think at some point we did get dismounted. It was near the casualty evac. I remember watching them load guys up. We ran out, and me, Sergeant Gill, and someone else handcuffed two dudes randomly. Kind of feel bad about it. Right around the time more mortars start landing. So we're like, we can either grab these guys and take them in the back of the Bradley with us, or just leave them here. So we're like, we're going to leave them here. And we back to Bradley while the incoming, I mean, it was fucking close, man. Like within 5 meters of the fucking Bradley, no bullshit. And we watched the guys get evacuated out of there, and that was heavy. That was another time, you know, besides Kreider, that I've seen any soldiers wearing the same uniform as us injured, you know, and it wasn't just one or two. It was every fucking body from my perspective, you know. It was like, fuck, like Kevin said, you guys totally got fucking targeted, because we didn't see anyone until much later from our side, because all the fire was forced on you guys.
Yeah, we had Nathan Brown was he was killed in the back of the 5-ton, and then the squad leader, Staff Sergeant Mechanic, Hemsing, Jury, Nellis, Arnold, Byrne, they were all wounded also in the back, and there were probably 12 guys in the back of that 5-ton. And those are the ones who were wounded from that incident. And we actually ended up using the 510 as our CASEVAC vehicle because the middle wheel was blown off, but the other wheels were working, and the driver was able to drive that vehicle all the way to the SF house.
So, let's see here. 3rd Platoon was ordered to stay in place at the Minaret Traffic Circle, which had been a site for IEDs in the past. This is ordered by Captain Rockefeller. So Captain Rock attacked down 40th Street with Lieutenant Gunther's 2 remaining Bradley. So that's 2nd Platoon. That's us. And then we link up with Sergeant Baggett's track, and we continue to fight along down what looks like 40th Street. And this is an interesting turn of events because at this point in time we finally get air assets. We get 2 AH-64 Apaches, and they come on scene, on station, if I'm reading the verbiage right. So they come on station, but they apparently had difficulty spotting targets, which I think is an interesting thing because you watch movies and the Apaches and they're picking people out left and right. But apparently one of the and I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that one of the Apaches had been hit, but it took a hit from an RPG and took out the rear rotor. So I think it went ahead and tracked back to Fob Spiker. So going on through the rest of the battle, we had a downed Humvee. Was that your guys' Humvee?
It wasn't ours.
Headquarters?
No, ours. We recovered all our vehicles.
Okay.
I think
No, that was
Headquarters.
that was at the intersection I had to go to. Yeah, that was Sergeant Bourneman's Humvee.
Okay, so yeah, he took that RPG in the back end and took out the 2 rear wheels, I guess. So I'm just going to read this straight from it. Once all Bravo elements had linked up, they moved east down Route Heat instead of perimeter on the outskirts of the city. They were attempting to repair the downed Humvee when they again received fire from the mosque on the intersection of 50th and Heat. And I think that's the mosque that you were talking about, right, George?
Yeah, that would probably be it. Yeah.
One RPG round went directly over the tanks, the repair effort, and Captain Rockefeller impacting 50 meters away from the commander. Sergeant Major Pruitt's M1114 and the Abrams tank returned fire at the mosque with their machine guns. Major Casper gave the clearance for the tanks to shoot 120 millimeter. Immediately, Sergeant First Class Manuel Cantigas tank fired 9 main round guns into the mosque, silencing the mosque as well as tearing massive holes through the building.
Boy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can
remember that.
I can tell you someone from Bravo shot 4 rounds into that before that. So there were a total of 13 rounds in that mosque then. So, yeah.
You know, it's
Fuck that mosque.
well,
Yeah.
So after that, we get the Kiowa warrior helicopters from 14 Cav. So at this point, I think the Apaches are off station now because one of them was wounded, or the damaged, and then now we get the Kiowa, the little birds. I tried looking for this pilot and couldn't find him anywhere on social media, and I do remember hearing this come over the net, thinking to myself, "Holy fuck!" So these Kiowas, they're flying over the city. They're kind of providing an overwatch. I don't remember if they were armed. I'm sure they were armed, obviously, but I don't know if they had miniguns or what they had. Do you know?
Yeah. So I know that they were so when they came over the city, they ended up linking up with 3rd Platoon and they were escorting 3rd Platoon. 3rd Platoon was going to go east around the city and then come through the north and not drive through the city. So they were taking, and I think that's when they linked up with Rockefeller at that point when they were moving there. So then it was a large group. And then at the link up, that's where the Kiowa took fire and the pilot was injured and they had to land.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
I think we made our way over there where that pilot was down and we pulled security around it. I remember that for sure because I was like, "Holy fuck!" Pilot got shot. Like, wow, this is
Black Hawk Down.
This is some crazy stuff. Again, we didn't see a lot of this. We only heard it from the back of the Bradley, so we can hear the rounds popping off of everything. We can hear craziness on the radio, but again, we're only looking through these tiny little portholes, and that's all we got.
And I'll tell you, so as a dismount in the back of one of these Bradleys, I mean, these Bradleys are pretty amazing machines. I'm super happy that I got to deploy in one of these things. Whether a dismount or a crew, I would have been happy either way. But one of the big fears as a dismount is you're in the back of this thing. You have no control over what's happening. You cannot maneuver. You cannot return fire. You can't identify targets. You're just sitting in the back waiting for that ramp to come down, and then you go into action. So you're just there in the darkness. Right? There is a blue light back there, but it's very dim, and most of the time they didn't work anyway. So it's dark, it's dusty, and it's hot. And we're just sitting there waiting, listening to these rounds ping off the side of the Bradley, or RPGs impacting around you, or IEDs going off, or mortars impacting. And the biggest threat to the Bradley at that time, aside from, say, a landmine underneath that might take out the road wheels and track and maybe damage the hull, was RPG 7s. And those were dual charge, right? So you had the initial charge that would burrow through the armor, and then the secondary charge that would detonate on the inside of the hull where we were, essentially creating a vacuum and liquefying anything on the inside. And so here we are sitting ducks essentially in the back of this vehicle, hoping to God that our Bradley crews had eyes in the back of their head and they're seeing everything. And they were, like, you guys, like, the Bradley crews were phenomenal. They had been together, I mean, for a while. Like, how long had you been on that track with
I was actually 2.7's gunner since Kosovo,
yeah.
since like summer of 2002. Now 2 months before we deployed, and by 2 months I mean, like, dude, it was more like 6 or 7 weeks before we deployed. Uh, they pulled my Bradley commander and gave me a brand new one.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I was training Sergeant Baggett on how, like, a Bradley fighting vehicle worked, like, up until the point where Easter Sunday happened.
Right. And so as far as all the Bradley crews, that he was pretty much the newest addition, and fortunately he picked it up well, and had a taste for it.
Yeah, oh yeah, he loved that thing.
So here we are
That
sitting in the back, hoping and praying that we don't receive an RPG to our to the rear, because while we had reactive armor that would expel anything larger than a 50 cal, the ramp was not armored at all, and on top of that, it's already the Bradley's weakest point, because it doesn't have that, what is it, like an inch of steel or whatever it was. It's just
Yeah,
basically two plates of metal with space in between them. So it's kind of like this hollow ramp, and it wouldn't have taken a lot for something to get through that. And so there we are sitting in the back, just hoping that we don't get anything up the rear. And
me both.
yeah,
it
and
was so cool listening to you guys though the entire time. Like it wasn't panic. I don't think here in
no,
Ohio, it was not panic.
yeah,
There was excitement. Wasn't panic.
it's
Um,
it's like when you watch these videos of, like, pilots and they have malfunctions in the plane, and they maintain this level of calm, and like the Bradley crews. So best thing I can compare it to, you watch the movie Fury, and the four tanks are moving along and they all pull off into that field and they start engaging the German Panzer, and the way they're maneuvering, the way they're communicating, like, they're, like you said, excited, but like not shouting, not like in full on panic mode. It was it was like that. It was very clear, it was very coordinated, it was very practiced, because it had been, so yeah, it was something to hear for sure. Like, definitely gives you more confidence in the crews operating the death trap that we're in, the steel coffin that we're in.
yeah, I wasn't. I
Now,
was a lot of my fear about what was going on after hearing you guys do your thing and listening to everything that's going on. It alleviated a lot of it because I'm like, you guys got it covered. Like as long as I'm in here at that point, because it sounded terrible outside. I'm like, as long as I'm in
yeah,
here, I'm good. And these dudes who are operating this fucking thing. They're killing it right now, literally, like at every corner. Um, so hats off to you guys for sure, because
It,
I would have
dude,
handled that on some day one welcome to the fight type stuff. Like that's heavy duty on
it's
everyone's part.
I appreciate it, okay, but at the same time, like I like how you guys think we were all calm, and dude, you can ask the dudes in the back of my track, dude. I was screaming my fucking nuts off. Like I was like, motherfucker, come out, motherfucker. And I was like hammering on that gun, just boop, 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 boop.
Yeah.
And I could hear the dudes in the back just like, yeah. But like, no, dude, I was freaking the fuck out. Like I don't think I've ever been that scared in my fucking life. Like ever. Like it was like every firefight, every engagement after that was like, okay, I've been here before, but like Easter Sunday, that was when I got my cherry popped. You know what I mean? That's
Maximum pucker effect.
Yeah.
dude. I was afraid. Like
Were you
no
petrified?
shit. I was afraid. I mean, I was crying and shit. Like
So that Kiowa, so it's flying around, and CW3 Knox was piloting one of them, and he took a round from the bottom, through the bottom of the bird, through his foot, and exited his calf. And even though he had been shot through the leg long ways, he still managed to land this helicopter. That I mean, you can talk about like if I were shot, this would happen or that would happen, or I would respond this way or whatever. But and you really never know until you're in that situation. And I bet you, I just can't help but wonder, like did he ever anticipate ever being shot while flying around in this thing? The movie Black Hawk Down had actually just come out in 2002, no 2001. No, it was 2001. So we were in the field at Grafenwehr at Camp Aachen, and they gave us a Donza to go watch it. Everybody, it was mandatory. We had to go watch Black Hawk Down because a lot of the guys, a lot of our older dudes, they were either in some way, shape, or form a part of it or knew people that were a part of it. So we had to go watch it, and so I feel like that's also kind of fresh in our mind. So here we are, we hear on the net that this Kiowa had been hit, and for the guys that remember the Apache taking an RPG, like holy fuck, here we go, Black Hawk Down Part Two, Iraq edition, and so fortunately it didn't turn out the same way, and I feel like not to obviously discredit those guys, the Rangers and the Delta guys at Mogadishu, but like we had the Bradleys, man. Like it's hard to, with what they had, it's hard to fight us. But I don't know. I don't want to
I think
compare
it
the
was
two because
in that initial ambush. I think it was Dury who he was in the gunner. He was a gunner for that vehicle in the 510. So we had a couple of them on top, and I think it was there was no armor around him. And I'm not sure if he was shot or it was from the blast, but I know he had two major leg injuries. Um, and he got blown out of the turret, and he crawled back in the turret and turned fire.
who was that?
Just Dury. I think it was Dury, and I think, boy, I don't have the paperwork. He may have gotten, maybe a silver star for that. But he literally he was blown out of the turret of the fire. I mean, it's not really a turret, but the O-ring,
Yeah.
and crawled back up in there and started returning fire. And he rode that turret all the way to the ODA house.
Yeah, you guys
See,
have
it's
who
good.
did
Sorry.
crazy things. I wanted to ask you, all right, this is our first big thing, your first big thing. You're in charge of everything now. What's going on in your head while you're trying to wrangle all this stuff together? I mean, it's like
So,
And
it's
you were
like
you were a first lieutenant, right? At this point.
yeah, I still hadn't been promoted yet.
yeah,
So, I when it first happened, I don't know, it was shock. It was like surreal. You don't expect anything like that to happen, and then you know I think the hard part, when it comes over the radio that you lost someone, it's it's a disappointment in yourself, because at the time you feel like you let people down. And I remember, at that point I wanted to make sure we got the Kazovac taken care of. And that was my priority at that point, to make sure that we had the fight in the Kazovac and I got those guys out of there, which is why we left, and brought them to the traffic circle. And then we came back, and I can tell you, I was more in a daze than anything else. And I remember getting to the ODA house after all this, and the ODA captain, Captain Teague, he grabbed a hold of me, shook me, and he said, "Listen," he goes, "this is why we get paid the big bucks." And he's like, "Now you got to earn it." And I remember I was like, "All right." And he's like, your guy's still in the truck. So I want to say it was Tim Haig, and I'm not sure who the other person was, but Captain Teague, Tim Haig, and I and one other person jumped into the truck, and we took Brown out of there. And then he's like, "You got to get your guys back in the fight." So I went over to this big ammo pallet they had and started reloading my magazines. And I told everyone, "Let's go. We're getting ready to go back out. Third platoon's still out there." And I think because I was able to stay busy, I didn't have to think about it very often. It was just, what's the next task? What's the next task? I got to keep the guys focused. It was a little bit easier than for other people, because they had to sit there and think. But no, it's rough. It's really rough.
Man, I feel you, man. I mean, I can't. I have no idea how to feel that. That's heavy. Um, Thank you for sharing that with us, because a lot of people hold that in forever. Um, so I really do appreciate that. And fuck, man, wow.
As an infantryman, right? There's this obviously this understanding that your job is to go fight and possibly die, right? But when you're there, like you never really kind of realize that it's you, and or that, that it could be you or whatever. Just doesn't really necessarily occur. And as on an individual level, right, when you're just a regular enlisted guy and you're just there to follow orders and do what you're told, then that's that, man. But when you're in charge of the guys, I mean, that's so much more. And yeah, like Tyree said, like we couldn't even begin to understand like what that feeling is like. um you know do you feel that after that, when y'all got back out there, I mean, just kind of what we talked about last month with Kreider and all of that stuff, do you feel like there was like a sense of like, fuck this, it's let's go hard, let's go heavy?
I remember we got back to the fob that night, and I got the whole company together, and we were in the grain silo, and we were getting ready for a mission the next morning to hit a village on the other side of the river, on our side of the river, from Samara. Well, because we weren't going back in. I don't remember what little village it was, but and I remember telling the guys, like, "All right, well, let's get it all out. What does everyone think?" And the guys were like, "Well, we should have Bradleys, we should have tanks." And I was like, "All right, how many guys can drive a Bradley here?" And no one raised their hand. So I was like, "Great, we got Bradleys, no one can drive them. We can't get around where we can't do our mission." And it was getting people back on task on what they had to do. But I think before that, it was all, I don't want to say it was like a game, but it was more like, all right, yeah, we're doing this thing. And then, April 11th happened. And then it was like, this is real. Like there's like, people are dying, people are getting hurt. We got what, 6-7 guys who are getting evac to Germany. One KIA. It's real. It's in your face. You can't even, it's not like it happened over there. It happened to us. we're looking at our vehicles, and there's bullet holes all over the side. You can see the ricochets all over the side. You can see where RPGs scrape the paint from bouncing off the hood because they weren't taking they didn't take the safety pins off the warheads, so they weren't exploding, but they were just bouncing off. And it was, I think it made things, it went from that whole, well, this is a we're here to do a job, to, well, now we're here to take care of each other. And I think that it brought us closer together, where we're like, we're taking care of each other now. It's not, okay, it's we're first and everything else is second.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the day's events, so this all kicked off around 1600 or so, maybe a little earlier. Then everything kicked off around 1600 local time. And then we kind of move into the night battle. So there was a link up with you guys' third platoon, and then kind of came into nightfall. So about 2100 at night. So we're still in the city. We're still kind of taking care of business and moving around and maneuvering. So that was when, okay. So they moved unimpeded until Celtics, where they took RPG and small arms fire from the Green Mosque. Colonel Allen, our battalion commander, and his element attacked south on 30th, and they engaged an enemy element of 2 individuals, one with an RPG, killing both. So it was around this time where, so I was wrong. It was our divisional commander, Major General John Batiste, who had approved attacking the Green Mosque with a 500-pound bomb by an F-16, and Colonel Dragon, who opted to use the 155 artillery fire from the Paladins that were back on Brassfield. They missed their shot, and they did not adjust fire, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing. They missed by 100 meters, with no adjustments requested. I don't know why there weren't any adjustments requested, but maybe just 155 impacting pretty nearby would be enough to say, okay, we'll fuck off somewhere else.
Yeah. Isn't that a good time to try to get that fucking dialed in right then at that moment? Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
Yeah, they probably had a pretty decent understanding of how, because they would fire mortars and then they would adjust fire. So they're probably thinking to themselves, well, they just dropped mortar on us and they missed, so they're probably going to adjust fire. So we should probably just kick rocks. So this part was interesting. Over on 30th Street in Celtics, the 2 confirmed killed by Spader 6 were observed by Lieutenant Ryan. That had to be put in there, so he gets those confirmed kills. Later that evening, after the 3rd battle, Lieutenant Ryan recovered the RPG rendered non-mission capable from 25 heat. Lieutenant Ryan is quoted as saying, "I only found a hand, a leg, and a pool of blood next to the damaged RPG-7." That was something that I don't think any of us were aware of or anticipated or even thought of, I guess, is that whenever we would get into these fights and we would kill somebody, it's hard to get a true confirmed count of how many we did take out, just because any of them that were alive would typically drag out the bodies. And I don't know if that was so they can have a proper Muslim burial, or to prevent us from being able to identify them, or however many we took out.
I think they're just recovering the weapon, to be honest.
No, I mean, because a lot of those times the weapons would be left.
Oh, well, fuck it.
Yeah, they'd come and recover their dead.
Yeah. And and as far as Islam, just 24 hours for burial. So there's that. So into the night, we ended up returning back to Brassfield Mora at about 23:30 for refit, and and it even says in here our Easter Sunday meal. So there we are, and I remember this refit because we go back. We just roll. So the way Brassfield Mora was set up is you had your entry gate, and then there was a kind of an empty void of a space where you had the fueling sections and all that stuff, and then further on there was where we stayed, where we lived, and all that. And so we only went to the refit area where the fueling points were. So refuel, refit, get more ammo. And from what this is saying, that in total, we were 50% on ammo, which is pretty. That's a lot of rounds fired. Griff, do you remember how many rounds of AP and HE and 7.62 does the Bradley hold?
Okay, so it holds, I think, 300 rounds of 25 millimeter total, and 70 of those are AP, and then the other 230 are HE.
Okay.
And when we pulled out of town to go to that Alpha Alpha, I had to reload, and I was red on HE. Like dude, I didn't have much HE left, and I actually had to train a dismount, Bozil. I had to train him how to load that thing like on the spot. But I mean, I could not believe how many rounds I went through, man. I went through a lot of rounds.
And so red, for clarification there. So you have, if you're green on ammo, that means you're fine. You maybe shot a few rounds, but as far as your basic combat load, like you're still pretty solid. Green is like 50, or I'm sorry, red is like 50% or less. And it sounds like you were closer to the less part, and then black on ammo is all rounds fired. How much coax did y'all go through?
I used my coax like one time,
Oh, really?
and like the old ODS versions of the M2A2, the coax mount is not good. Like you have to strap your machine gun down into it to get any kind of accuracy, and mine wasn't accurate. Like I shot at that first guy with the burst of coax, figured out that shit was going nowhere, and I just flipped it to HE high, and I never used that coax again the entire time I was in Iraq.
Hold
Never.
on a second. Wait, whoa. So you telling me that coax is fucked up?
Yeah.
When you were going on vacation, R&R, I was in your track and I shot at a guy with your fucking coax and that shit missed. It's
Yeah.
y'all's fault. Thank you.
No, uh, it's not your fault. It is. It's a design flaw. It's a design flaw in that system, in that gun system, dude.
Yeah, the
Uh,
mount.
I wouldn't use a coax
I
to
wish
save my fucking life, dude.
So-
I wouldn't.
I was a 25 instead of the coax. I don't know what I was thinking.
How much
Should've.
armor piercing did you go through? Did you
I
use
used
AP much?
it. I used AP at the ODA house when a guy was shooting at me from that graveyard. He's behind a mausoleum or whatever, and so I just punched up HE and shot through the mausoleum.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like my favorite round was the 25 HE. Like it was perfect.
Yeah. So we're back on the fob. We do our refit. We eat our Easter Sunday meal.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but I do remember it being cold.
I remember just staring at a lot of people and a lot of shaking our heads. I'm like, man, can you believe what the fuck we just been through?
Now, yeah, let's backtrack a little bit before we go back to the fob, though. I do, because this is one thing that kind of stands out in my memory, is that we were pulled out into perimeter, and we were finally dismounted, and we were lined up along a berm, and we were just watching into the city, and there was, I don't know how it was put out, if it was put out over the minarets or if it was just how it was put out, but they did a curfew. They put a curfew into effect, stating that anybody out in the road after this time was considered hostile. And so we were in kind of a standby position and waiting for that time. When that time hit, I remember Captain Rock coming over the net and saying, the time is now. Any person or vehicle in the road is now considered hostile. And not even 30 seconds later, one of the tracks, I'm not going to name which one, but we all know, engaged and lit up a car with I think it was 4 occupants. Engaged, 5 to 7 HE rounds, pause, and then some follow-up rounds, neutralizing everybody. And not maybe 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, there was another call over the net stating that, okay, so not everybody in the street is hostile, to get positive identification, or PID, prior to engaging. And that seemed, because I remember just sitting on the berm and being like, okay, well, I mean, they got the word to go inside and stay inside. That makes sense. And time hits, and I don't remember what time it was. It was still daylight out. I do remember that. I'm thinking maybe 17, 18, or 19, 2000. And then we're just kind of sitting there, kind of in silence, kind of waiting for the next order. And then Bradley goes off, boom, 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 boom. And we're like, oh shit, okay, well, I guess it's still going. And then some more rounds, boom, boom, boom. And then over the net, that second message came out. And that was shortly after that Kiowa got hit, I believe, or around that time. But yeah,
right after.
Yeah, it was. I remember watching that shit. That was crazy.
Yeah.
So George, did you guys during that refit? Did y'all come back to Brassfield as well? Like, where were y'all during that?
Yeah. So as soon as we finished with the Kazovac, we were on standby for the helicopter that went down. And then when 3rd Platoon was escorting them in, we just waited for 3rd Platoon. Once they got back in, then we were ordered back to Brassfield Mora. We got back to Brassfield Mora. We picked up the next day's mission, which was to, I can't remember, hit the village that was just southwest of Samara, but it was on our side of the river. So we weren't going to cross the bridge into Samara just because we were all light skinned and they didn't want to have our light skinned vehicles moving around with tanks and Bradleys, like that. Because I think they pulled all your Humvees out after your initial engagement, and they just went strictly tanks and Bradleys at that point. But yeah, so we just got ready for the follow-on mission. We got back to Brassfield Mora, like I said, planned out the next day's mission, and I think we were up at like 04 moving out to basically do a cordon search from that town.
So you guys didn't come back in with us, because we went back in at, I think it was like 01. And reading through this, I didn't realize this either, but 3rd Platoon of our company at the time was pulling security over at the FOB at Brassfield Mora, and I'm sorry, it was Alpha Company was on force protection, and Headquarters Company Commander Captain Joe Sowers ordered cooks and other support personnel and mechanics to take over battle positions at Brassfield, allowing Captain Marlin to take 2 full platoons and the Bradleys from 3rd Platoon, whose dismounts were at the ODA house. And so them and us, so I guess they probably came in the city in replacement of you guys, while you guys kind of rested up for your follow on. And which is smart. Yeah, I mean, because since you guys back, I mean, you guys definitely did get hit pretty heavily. And
yeah, I think that was the best thing, even though it was, it was off, it was in an area where there was nothing going on, but to get the guys out that next morning and not just sit there and actually get them back into the game and into the whole mindset of going out and doing the missions again was really good. Because I think if they would have been like, all right, you guys just take over force protection, it would have been rough. So the fact that we just kept doing missions, kind of made the transition from, pre-Easter Sunday to post-Easter Sunday a little bit easier.
I'm trying to in my mind, I'm trying to remember if this is the same event, but Was this follow on, Griff and Tyree? Do y'all remember? Was this follow on? So we're doing this. We're coming back into the city, and was this the same time where the Abrams tank goes off and blasts first squad or was that your squad, whatever squad it was, moving along the flanks of the Abrams when it goes off? And
Yeah,
was that the same
yeah.
night?
They shot at an RPG gunner
Yeah.
with the main round.
Yeah, but was this the
Like,
same night?
Yeah, for Sergeant Gill's squad was like pretty much like right next to that tank when
Yeah.
they did it.
Right next to it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if this was the same night. So we're coming back into town, I believe. So Alpha Company is already in town, and we're linking up with them. So we're doing a movement to contact, and at this point, we get dismounted, and I am moving with Sergeant Gill squad, and I have the radio, and I have limited memory of this just because of I injured myself like a dumbass. Well. So we're doing this movement to contact. We're on the ground and we're moving tactically, as tactically as we can, as tactically as we can next to Bradley's. But we're providing flank coverage for the Brads, and so we're moving along sidewalks and running across big open areas full of rubble and all of that stuff. And I remember there's one area where we had to start at one corner and run at an angle to another corner across a big field full of like rocks and rubble and stuff, and then at another angle to get back to the sidewalk. And the whole time I'm running and I'm looking through my nods, all I'm thinking is, don't blow out your ankle, don't blow out your ankle, because I had a previous left ankle injury. Get all the way there to the midway point, didn't blow out my ankle. Halfway there, bud. Just keep running, don't blow out your ankle. So I run all the way over there, make it all the way to the sidewalk. I get there, I'm like, oh, good, I didn't blow out my ankle. And I go to step around the corner, and at the same time, Alpha Company, who I believe was like a block or two away, there is engagement, there is contact. At the same time, I step around this corner, and I don't know if that caused something. I do know that the sidewalk was at an angle. I step on that and blow up my damn ankle. Fuck it all the way up. So I've got the radio and all my other gear on me. So I go to the ground and meet. He jumps down. He comes down and grabs me by my body armor, and in one big motion just picks me up to my feet and puts me up against the wall, like he's about to beat my ass, And he's like, "You okay, Johnson? You okay? You okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not hit. I'm not hit. I just blew up my fucking ankle." And he's like, "Okay, good." And I try to walk and I can't walk at all. So I get put back in the Bradley. So there I am for the rest of the night listening to the fight again through the radio. And so you guys moving alongside the Abrams when it goes off,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't get to hear the chatter that I got to hear, and it's one of my favorite stories to tell, because the tank commander, I can't remember what his name was. I think it might have been that I can't remember his name. Anyway, he comes over the net and says, "Hey, I got an RPG team moving east to west on this wall." Captain Rock says, "Light them up, take them out."
Mm-hmm.
So he does. He engages with the main gun, and the main gun goes off, and that's when the dismounts, Sergeant Gill squad, are moving to its flank. The Abrams didn't know they were there, and the dismounts didn't know the tank was about to fire. Main gun goes off, and Tyree, you can tell this part, and boom, right? And I'm hearing on the net like 30 seconds later, Captain Rock, "Hey, I need a sit rep on that RPG team." And he says, "Well, what do you mean, sir?" He's like, "Are they dead?" He's like, "Dead? They're split all over the place." And that is verbatim how that conversation went.
He said they're splattered all over the place. Yes.
Yeah. So, two-man RPG team taken out by the main gun of an Abrams, while dismounts were moving to its flanks. Tyree, how'd that go for you?
All I remember is the noise, what? And that was it. I believe some folks got thrown through garage doors, like clean through it. It blew me like not very far, like just up and down, maybe like about 5 feet, but it was straight into the dirt. Like I don't remember hitting the ground or anything. like I say, all I remember was the initial flash and the initial sound of this thing going off, and there's literally all I remember was what, and then that was it. I woke up, my eyes popped open, like, okay, either I'm dead and I don't feel it yet, somebody's about to take me over to the afterlife right now, or I'm just knocked out and I need to snap out of it because I don't feel any pain. I just can't fucking hear anything. And I assumed something hit the side of the Bradley and splashed us. That's what I thought happened. Not Bradley, Abrams tank. I thought something hit the side, hit them, and we caught some shit from it. So when I figured out that I wasn't fucking dying or dead or even close to anything bad, I just couldn't hear anything. Just pop right back up and back to mission.
Take some Motrin, drink some water, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Talking to the other guys, they were, they thought, the same thing, like they're dead, and this the sound of it, and then being thrown into something, big white flash, and the next thing you know, oh shit, is this where I get ferried off into the afterlife?
Yeah.
Or did I die and this is my hell? I'm right back here reliving this moment, you know. Um so yeah, that it never really occurred to me that actually that was the same night. And I feel like to this day, like I'm still like I have my ankle issues still. And I think that night was like the final nail in my ankle's coffin. So now I can blow it out and it doesn't swell or anything. It just, hurts for like 20 minutes and I go right back at it because I think I tore all those ligaments.
This tinnitus, man. Thank you, 3M, for that payment. It's on the way, baby.
Yeah.
It's on
Yeah,
the way.
you got to plug your 3M thing, huh?
Hell yeah,
Um,
man. Man, shit for me. You gotta stay on top.
so yeah, right. Um, so by 04 in the morning, the nighttime curfew was lifted, and by 05, Colonel Allen had moved all task force elements back to Brassfield Mora, um, effectively ending the Battle of Easter Sunday. During the 15-hour battle, an estimated 45 enemy were killed and an unknown number wounded. Task Force 126 sustained 1 KAA and 8 wounded, to include the 1-4 Cav pilot. And in reading some of these uh what would you call these I don't know, these battle assessments or whatever. I feel like they tend to underestimate the amount of enemy KIA.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's especially true with this one because, when the battle kicked off, and Charlie Company is out there going to work, you can probably account for more, most of those 45 that they're counting here. And I know that the Bradleys throughout that whole battle, I don't know about the nighttime. I mean, I know the tank took out those two. It's hard to,
And
find anything left of those guys, but
everyone, Georgia's folks got, he said they have 40 people lined up, right?
Yeah, so I think the issue you run into is that initially they can get a good BDA because everyone's laying in the streets. Where Bravo and we were on the edge of the city, so you have the edge of the city and then you have desert. So right on the edge, but there's you could actually see the people. Where when you moved in a block, if you shot someone, they're in a doorway, they're in an alleyway, you can't get that assessment. So, like when the birds are flying over, the UAVs are flying over, they can see our KIA. They can see that because it's a straight down shot. They're on an oblique. There's nothing blocking them. Now, once you move into the city, they don't get that view. Anything street side, I mean, just even like when you're using UAVs, you'd see people moving, but they would just appear because they step out of a corner. So now you have a person who's down, you're not going to pick them up as easily. So I think that's the numbers are probably twice as high, but all they can see is the stuff along the edge of the city. And I
right,
think that's where most of your battle damage or your assessment came from, was from the edge of the city.
right.
But it was probably twice as many people. It was, but we'll never really know. I
Right.
mean,
Well, no, our battle at the ODA house, I mean, we were there for I mean, I think they estimated the battle at like 12 hours long, and I know the Bradley crews were firing pretty much nonstop, except for the one that was on the backside. They weren't firing as much, and I know the dismounts on top of that, the one building closest to the entry gate, the dismounts up there with the 50 cal and Mark 19 and other small arms. And on top of that, we had our snipers on the other building with the Pesh and the SF guys. And I know they were firing constantly. And I want to say the battle damage assessment for that was like 20 or 30. It was not very much. And for the amount of firing that was going on and for the accuracy of fire that I know they were delivering, that number had to be low as well. Um, and I guess they have to be kind of conservative with those numbers.
Yeah, and I think people are pulling bodies into the homes.
Yeah.
They're getting them off the street as soon as possible. So, 2 hours later when a UAV goes over, they're not seeing anything because the streets been cleaned up.
Right.
Usually, and we saw that when in Baton Rouge, like, you'd shoot a guy and he'd be out there and 20 minutes later, he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's come and picked him up and they've carted him away. So they were very quick on picking the bodies up. So I think that's probably why there's such a low count. In that area that we were in, they couldn't, like, once we left, Bravo Company was in that area. So there was no way that anybody was able to grab the bodies right away. Which is why I think that's where most of the body count came from, just because just the way things were, they stood there for a lot longer.
Yeah, they weren't able to retrieve them. I know we got into, there was one time that stands out to me when we were at what we call the OK Corral. And I don't remember which track engaged, but it was they identified it as an RPK machine gun firing at their position. Bradley lights them up, and then they immediately head over to assess, and there was nothing. I mean, I think there was blood splatter, but there were no people, no parts, no weapons, anything like that. So, but yeah, and maybe that was for their burial purposes. Maybe it was so that we couldn't get a good assessment of how many we were actually taking out. Who knows? But, in the end, it is what it is. Yeah. So really, I guess to recap, right? Because we're 25 minutes past when we said we'd be done. But so from what 1600 or right before 1600, April 11th to 05, April 12th, the Battle of Easter Sunday, 2004. It was our probably, well, I guess next to Baton Rouge, our largest engagement. And I know for me, and just from conversations that I remember, if Dustin Kreider, the event with Dustin Kreider the month before set the tone for, or not set the tone, but like made our situation a reality, Easter Sunday set the tone. And I think, moving forward through the rest of the year, like you had said, Griff, like we hadn't really seen anything like this. And I think you said the same thing, George, like we hadn't really seen anything like this before. I mean, but training is only training. It's hard to take training real. You do the best you can, but when it actually happens in real life and you are truly tested and you are truly put through the ringer, it really does kind of set the tone and allows you moving forward to determine your level of aggression. And, here we are, 2 months in, not even a full 2 months in. And, our task force is, we're already down, 2 and many more wounded. And we have 10 more months of this. So, yeah.
For me personally, man, that whole night really made me appreciate you guys so much more, because again, anything can happen quick. And I tried to make a strong attempt to get closer to everyone else. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, you shouldn't try to get close to folks in this kind of combat thing because they're always gone and shit like that." But no, I try to make an honest effort to really get closer. Besides, like I love to work with these people. We're gonna work together great, but I don't know shit about him and his family stuff. And I think while we were there, I tried to get closer to folks, and just because learning, so I saw what happened to those guys over there on that side, and I'm like, holy fuck, it could be at any fucking second, any second,
Yeah.
and just how it's going to be for the rest of this year. And this is just the start of it. And it was heavy. That day was probably, I think, by far the heaviest day, period, for me. And I didn't really do much. I really didn't. I just experienced a lot. I was along for the ride for a lot of fucking incredible shit just in a very short amount of time. And you really, it made me appreciate, how they say it makes you appreciate life. It really did, dude. Like I saw a lot of people fucking go that day, like a lot of people. And by the grace of God, it wasn't anyone that, I went to any training with, it happened to them on that side over there. Now we're going to start talking to them. I knew that after that, I met Ski. We're talking. Um, you just got to try to get to know the folks that you're around, man, because at any second it could change.
Yeah.
And like I said, we still got a year. I mean, what, 10 more months to go. So here we go. And
I will say on that note too. So, and knowing after the fact that that Charlie Company, you guys got hit as hard as you did, like I know, like for us, like I know that we felt like fuck, man, like
yeah,
we got to do more for these guys, and I mean, because you guys were limited on what y'all had, and you guys made do with what you had, and did a pretty damn good job of it. Um, and I know we said this before in one of the previous shows with you guys, but like I feel like today, I still feel like we were pretty fucking lucky to get stuck with you guys. You know what I mean? Like you guys, I mean, and I know I said this in that first episode we recorded with you guys. Like, hey, we're active duty guys. These are National Guard. What can they possibly? How good can they possibly be? But you guys fucking showed up, man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think we ever
For
felt
real.
like we were the step kids sitting
Yep.
out there. We all felt like we were part of the team, so that was good.
Oh yeah. Well, do y'all have anything to add? No.
then well, thank you, Griff, for coming on. Thank you, Georgia, for coming on. Thank you for sharing your stories. Hopefully, we won't have to keep doing this shit on this show anymore. We can record it, lock it up, and there it is. We don't have to keep bringing this stuff up over again, over and over again. But thank you for listening to. Before I forget, please like, listen, share, subscribe, watch. No closeout music today. We're just gonna end it. Um, thank you for listening. Say bye, Kevin.
Bye, Kevin.